Hey guys, so today's video I'm going to be going over a bit about composing shots in drone photography. So I'm just taking off the drone here and flying off into the distance. So I've had the drone now for about 2 months or so, and I've learned a fair bit about the types of compositions that work and the similarities and differences from traditional photography with like a normal camera. Like I use the Sony A7 Mark II. So I just wanted to sort of share some of my thoughts on it and some of the benefits of drone photography versus photography on the ground, basically. So one of the things, this might not be immediately apparent, but when you're taking photos, usually you have a little walk around the place and you find some nice spots and you go, oh, the light's good here, trying to find a good angle, and you just walk around, use your eyes to find out a good shot and a good composition. Even before you even bring the camera to your face, you can find a good shot and think, that's going to make a good photo, let me get my camera out and it'll take the shot with a certain lens and things like this. But with a drone you can't explore that way, so you actually have to fly around and do the exploring with the screen on the remote control that you use to control the drone around. So you don't get the same level of sort of perspective of how a scene looks, because you can't walk around yourself in that height, basically. So a lot of the time is taken up flying around, just finding shots, or flying to a spot and thinking, is this angle good? And then you have to go there, find out, and then if it's not good, then you have to fly to a different spot. So a lot of the time it's actually just flying around, not even taking shots or taking video. It's just finding good compositions or good scenes, if the lighting is good. And things are slightly different when you're up at that elevation, so that takes a bit of getting used to as well. Like the way the light's coming down, it's a lot more, you're a lot higher up, so the light's coming down a lot more on top of it. So the angles that you see on the ground are completely different once you get high up. So here, this shot here, I'm just flying around this little village, is Littleton, so a little port village town, and I'm just trying to find a good angle here for a nice shot. Now, one of the things I try to do with my drone photography is take shots where there's an actual advantage to having the drone, because some shots you can see you don't necessarily need a drone for that shot. So this shot here did allow me to move closer to the scene at the same height, basically. So I was able to move away from the top of the hills and move closer to the town with the drone, so I can get a slightly closer view of the scene, and it compresses it slightly more, brings the foreground houses and roads closer to the foreground, which would be quite a bit harder just with the normal camera. So this next shot here, I've flown in the other direction, and from the ground level where I was standing, I could see some really nice, like amazing clouds that were lying really low on the hills, but I couldn't get a proper view of how they looked from the ground. So that's like an obvious advantage to having the drone, is that you can fly up, and just as soon as I rose up maybe 50 meters, I could get a much clearer view of the scene and how the clouds were interacting with the scene in the hills here. So this is where you have to fly over to your scene a bit more, which is a slightly different workflow than you usually have on the ground. Usually you're much closer to your scene, or you walk over to the scene and you're getting a sort of a real life view with your two eyes, and you can see how things work and how things interact with each other. So with the drone you're trying to sort of imagine how things look using the back of the controller screen. So it's a little bit harder to get perspective on the scale of things as well. Like in this video here, and when you're recording video, you get much better idea of the scale, but in photography you have to convey that scale in a still image. So one of the things you have to keep in mind is to try and put something in your scene that gives a scale to the image. So in this scene here, I'm trying to get a shot of the road here, and with the clouds on the right side and the hill on the left, but the road is the thing that gives the scale, and most people know generally how big a road is, so that immediately puts things into perspective. If that road wasn't there, it'd be much harder to tell if I was really high up or if I was quite close or low to the ground, because everything is a slightly different perspective than most people see things from day-to-day life. I just wanted to show this shot here as well. Some cloud just coming over this top of this sort of ridge area here, and it's really dramatic and it makes some really nice shots. And in the video you get a good idea of the scale, but video doesn't always translate to a photograph. So in the photograph it'd be harder to convey the scale a bit more. You do get road on the left hand side, which gives an idea of the scale, but just in general the composition is a bit messy for photograph, but I think it makes a nice video. When I first got to this scene, there wasn't much cloud movement going on, and it just started picking up, and as these clouds started to increase, the wind started picking up, and so you have to keep an eye on the wind when you're flying the drone around as well, because it can struggle in high wind situations. Now this scene here is a great example of how differently light works depending on how high you are. So for me, I'm standing on the ground here looking at these clouds moving over the hills here, and from my perspective they're really white and they're really clear, but from the high up they don't even look that dramatic. You can see them a little bit, they're quite wispy, and you can see through them quite a lot. They're not very opaque, and this is because of the angle the sun's coming in at them. So from above you're seeing the light almost parallel to where you're looking down at, but from the bottom the light's coming in perpendicular and it's backlighting the clouds a lot more. So this is an example where a shot can look good from the ground but might not look so great from up above. So now I've come down more towards the eye level, and you can see the clouds look a lot more dramatic, and it feels like there's way more of them just because the way the light's coming through, and they come up a lot more clear. So like this type of composition, I could take this from the ground, so I don't need the drone for this shot in particular here. But that's part of what comes with drone photography, is you have to fly around and explore the landscape and see if something will make a good composition or not. So you might only take like maybe 30 seconds to actually take the photo, but you might take up to like 10 minutes just flying around trying to find a good shot. So the workflow is slightly different. So this last scene here, I thought this would make a great shot. You can see the clouds coming over, and from this height you can still see the clouds, compared to the last scene where the higher you went, just the way the light was coming through the clouds, they weren't too clear. But in this scene, just the way the landscape is, the light's still got a good angle even at a high vantage point. So in this shot I'm just trying to use the road again as a leading line up through the scene, and the clouds really add a dramatic aspect to the composition, which gives it a good pop. You can see in the final image here the clouds, and they really add something to the image, and they're quite white compared to the rest of the scene, so they contrast really nicely. And just the way the road leads your eye through the clouds up through the scene into the distance, and there's some dramatic clouds in the sky as well. So I hope you liked this week's video, guys, and I hope you learned a thing or two about drone photography composition. And I would appreciate it if you would like the video and subscribe to the channel if you're not already. Thanks!